everybody. I'm Susan Clinton, and I'm here with Erica Mello, and we're Tough to Treat. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about patients that sometimes are just a little bit elusive or maybe don't really fit into the mold, and kind of how Erica and I clinically reason around it. Hi, Erica. How are you today?
I am good, Susan. How are you? Getting
I'm,
over our snow.
yes. As we laid this podcast down, it's early in December of 2019, and New York got us snow yesterday, and Pittsburgh is getting snow today. So the first snows of the season always makes everybody a little bit crazy, I think.
I know, but it's nice to get snow in December. So
It is.
At least for me, it is.
It is. So,
Cool.
yeah, the case I'm going to talk about today is somebody that I've seen off and on for a while, and just interested in any kind of input you may have, Erica, as we kind of move through. It's a bit of a long, convoluted history, but it's a gentleman who is 38 years of age and has a very strong active participation background and playing sports and different things, and really enjoys hockey as kind of,
Ice hockey. Yeah.
ice hockey is kind of a thing that he likes to do. He's had several injuries throughout his life, but as he's always said, he can get over them pretty easy. Like, I don't know, they had an expected course of care. He had an injury to his back about 4 or 5 years ago, and had a whole lot of input at that time from various medical professionals, including things like a sports hernia to a torn rectus to a, arthritis in the lumbar spine, all kinds of things. Basically, his symptoms are and were at that time right-sided low back pain that goes into the right, gluteal area, and sometimes wraps around into the front of the hip.
Okay.
And has been elusive. So it will come and it will go. It will come and it will go. He had lots of imaging and lots of things, and he had various imaging that has said to him, we don't really see anything you have almost a complete tear of your iliolumbar ligament.
Oh boy. Okay.
So he's latched onto the iliolumbar ligament tear pretty hard, and has done a copious amount of research on it. And anyway, this has been going on for 4 years. So one of the things that he's had done is some of the PRP from physicians who felt like that would help strengthen whatever ligament injury he had. Has not seen any results from it much. He basically says that he feels that this happened in the hands of another PT. That he had a manipulation done to his lumbar spine that he felt was out of control, and he didn't like it, and it didn't feel like he was handled well. And it was after that he got the diagnosis. So whether that's here nor there, in my eyes, it's like, it's important to him. So there's no reason to argue with him, other than there's no way we can apply forces strong enough to tear a iliolumbar ligament.
Exactly. Quick question. This injury that he had 4 to 5 years ago, was it a hockey injury or was it like insidious onset?
It was a hockey injury.
Okay, like a traumatic fall to the ice type of thing?
It wasn't really a fall to the ice. I think it was just kind of a twisting, wrenching injury. Yeah.
Got it.
The way he describes it. So,
okay.
So he's been up and down and all around. He's seen various physical therapists. They've done everything from like bracing exercises to general mobility exercises to strengthening exercises. And the bottom line is he's just super afraid.
Yeah.
He's super afraid. So he's gone on to some other places, including a big medical center down the road in another state, and where he's seen somebody who actually, from the sounds of it, sounded like they did strain counter strain work on him, which he liked.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't really like anything very aggressive, even though he plays, aggressive sports.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of important to kind of hear. And the guy put him in a kind of an SI uh, restraint, um, because he told him his SI joint was out.
Like a
And
belt?
yeah,
Yep.
but a bit bigger than a belt and more
Okay.
elastic. So, and he
Mm-hmm.
said
Okay.
that feels pretty good when he's in it. So we talked a lot about, first of all, he just really needed to have his story told. So we spent a long time just listening to the story
Mm-hmm.
and asked him a number of open-ended questions about what he was really worried about, what's going on here. And his big thing is that, you know, without the iliolumbar ligament, is he going to be okay, and what can he and what he can't do? But he's got input from about 12 different people going on here. So I basically asked him, I said, what is it that you wish from me? What is your hope? What is your outcomes? What are your goals? What are you expecting here?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I just really want somebody to look at me with a real, good eye about my movement and stuff and see what I can and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want somebody to believe me, basically, was what he
Mm.
said. And I said, okay. So we did. We did a lot of stuff. We looked at, all of the usual things that you and I talk about all the time. We looked at bend overs. We looked at squats. We looked at sitting. We looked at standing. We looked at standing on one leg. We looked at twisting and moving and some different things. So bottom line, bend overs don't feel that great. They don't hurt that much, but they don't feel that great. But if he brings his legs apart, it seems like he feels a little bit better with it and has better control.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the the squats, he wouldn't really squat all the way down. He kind of squatted halfway, leaning over. And I asked him about that, and he just said he was worried about it hurt. And I said, well, why don't you try doing this? Why don't you like hang on to the door handle and squat down like a catcher and let's see what happens. That way you can hold the door and you can stop if anything begins to bother you. So he was able to squat all the way down. And he said that doesn't really bother me as bad as I thought it would. And then he
Mm-hmm.
made a comment that he goes, if I'm on the ground, like with my knees bent and I'm sitting on my legs, just kind of sitting on folded knees, that
Yep.
I'm okay because I think my back is straight. And I said, okay, so show me. So he got down on his, knees and stuff like that and showed me his positioning and stuff. And he said, I feel pretty good here. I feel like I'm contained.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked a little bit about that. And I said, well, I said, what's happening here is that you're putting yourself in a position to where it's hard to twist and it's hard to,
Mm-hmm.
flex over.
Yep.
But what's interesting with you is that flexing isn't nearly as bad as going into extension. But if he can get into kind of just that basic still point, he's good. So
Got it.
yeah,
Okay.
so we kind of explored that a little bit, and then we kind of went into some standing and standing on one leg, and he was unable to really stand and balance well
Mm-hmm.
on the right leg. He could stand on the left, but he shifted way over to the left,
Yep.
as you can imagine.
Yep.
Right, and then it really actually kind of surprised him, so that he was, and he was really trying to kind of sort that out and figure that out. And I said, well, he goes, I hadn't realized how much I was standing on my left side until we started doing this. So,
Mm.
it's like, okay, well, that's understandable. You've had this issue for a while and your brain is protecting and, um, so
Yeah,
let's just
makes
see what
sense.
else, what
Yep.
happens. I said, does it make it worse if we bring you over onto this right side? Or what if we get you off that left, all the way off the left side of your foot? See if you can even up yourself on your foot and just pick your right leg up and see what happens. And so we played around with some of that stuff and worked on that.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt like he could really, that was going to be super helpful for him. He felt like that was going to be important, and was actually going to change maybe the way he skated, because he tends to push with his right.
Mm-hmm.
To take, because I learned this about skaters. I did not grow up in a skating country. I grew up in the South. But skaters have a foot that they like to push off of,
Mm-hmm.
and for him it's the right. And
Yep.
he's felt uneasy about that for a long time because he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel like he has the power through the right side.
Got it. So
Yeah.
Susan, question. So in standing or in all these movement patterns, his center of mass was really prominently on his left side, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, okay. And then um in when he was, it's interesting when he got into knees with full bend, like in like almost like a prayer position on the ground and
Mhm.
standing, it's almost like being rigid, or like a rigidity posture,
Mhm.
not having that salsa in the system, actually he liked. So he
Yeah.
doesn't even like to move. It's like more of that,
Right.
I adopt a rigid posture, I feel good. But that's not life, and that's certainly not hockey.
Yeah.
In hockey, you have to be able to
Mhm.
move and everything. Quick
Mhm.
question. How is his rotation, his thoracic rotation?
So that's the next thing that we did was I
Got
wanted
it.
to
Excuse
that,
me.
and
Hmm.
I just asked him to twist around, and he actually twisted well on his feet.
Hmm.
Didn't move a whole lot through his pelvis and his back. Did have neck stiffness as well. So everything from the hips up was just kind of held pretty still,
Yep.
and most of the movement was coming through the feet and the knees.
Got it.
And so I kind of blocked his hips a little bit and had him just twist with the rest of his body. And he could do it, but he moved very gingerly to the right.
Hmm.
Um, I said, "Is this bringing on any of your pain?" He goes, "I think if I move slowly, it won't," because then he kind of got into his story about the pain that I get is electrical shocky, like really hits hard, but doesn't
Hmm.
last. And
Got it.
oftentimes he goes, "I can exercise and do things, but it's the next day that I really feel it. So I never
Right.
know if I'm overdoing it or not."
Hmm.
So we talked about that. We talked about blowing past his feet, kind of getting in touch with. I said, let's get a little bit mindful here. You're somebody who's used to feeling stuff all the time, so you ignore it. Let's get real mindful and just let me know anything that you're feeling so that we can kind of start getting a gauge on this, because we need to figure out how much you can do and how much feels safe to you, because right now that's an unknown to you. That
Hmm.
was the reflection I gave him. I said, you want to move, you enjoy movement, but you're not sure how to do it without causing a big flare up the next day.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so he was really kind of getting into that. Yeah, this is good. So, I said, well, let's take a look at some other things. So, he told me about how he sits in his chair at home and the other thing. So we kind of talked a little bit about that. He sits kind of slumped down into his chair. It's a kind of
Hmm.
a recliner type
Yep.
thing. So we made some adjustments there and talked about what would it look like if you put a pillow behind your back, if you got yourself a little bit straighter. I said, it seems to me that a lot of what you're telling me, and it happens at work too, is sitting for long periods of time.
And that bothers him. Yep.
Yeah.
Ah, got it. Okay.
And I said, I said, it just seems that the system isn't real happy with prolonged positioning.
Yep.
Does that sound accurate or not? And he said, yeah, if I sit for a long period of time, it bothers me. And I said, show me how you sit at work. And so does, and he really does sit kind of down into a kind of a flex lumbar,
Hmm.
sacral posture. And
Hmm.
I'm not one to worry about posture so much, but if this is how he's spending his day at work and his time at home,
Hmm.
and the only activity he's getting is these bursts of exercises when he has them. And right now he's not doing anything except just some easy, whatever you call it, hands and knees, and maybe, you know, um, some easy core exercises.
Hmm.
He's just not getting the movement that he's used to.
Yep.
And he said that he can walk without any problem at all. But if he does any kind of like jumping, like if he was to stand and jump up, it would
Hmm.
really bother him. And so I just said, well, do a small jump for me and let's see what happens.
Hmm.
And he was really worried about it. And I said, just do what you feel like you can do. You don't have to jump high, just a little jump. So he basically kind of shifted over to the left and did a hop,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
a lot of sense. So he doesn't like, his system.
He doesn't like loading that right side at all.
No, doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't really like loading the side, and so it's gotten pretty sensitized, it seems to me. The trick was getting him out of the idea that there's something wrong, in the whether or not there's a iliolumbar ligament or not. At this point, I don't know what to say. It's never a good thing if you tear a ligament completely. Nobody seems to agree on that though. He's had several
Hmm.
imaging, and some people agree and some people don't agree, and this kind of thing and that kind of thing. And I said, if we could just go with your symptoms and we could get you back to doing the things that you felt comfortable doing without symptom flares as much, or knowing how to handle the symptom flares,
Yep.
or is this taking you along the lines of what you would like? I know you want an answer, but I can't give you an answer. What I can give you is a way to modify at first your symptoms, and then begin to load this and see what we can get going here, so
Hmm.
that you can get back to doing the things you want to do.
Right. It's interesting because he said the
Mhm.
belt, the SI belt or whatever kind of
Mhm.
it, more elastic thing made him feel better, quote unquote. Then it's getting in that rigid posture on his knees. Any kind of rigidity, compression, belt-like sort of makes him okay. But and then that seems like the strategy he adopts in life, right? Um, but
Mhm.
my question is, um, what's driving that center of mass to the left? I mean,
Mhm.
it's been 4 years now, right? I mean,
Mhm.
at this point, the brain is done. I mean, it's obviously a learned movement pattern, and I get that he did that. But after 4 years, he's got to get off that left leg. And so, what's driving it? Is it, it's obviously the nervous system, but it is his foot, is it his pelvis, his thorax? Something is driving that.
Mhm.
And then after a while, that right side becomes completely atrophied, or he just can't load properly, or his whole brain, that whole smudging, the right side of his body and the brain is
Mhm.
completely not lit up, so to speak. So,
Right.
um,
Right.
you know, so,
Yeah. And so we talked to, and the big underlying thing for him is the fear that there's something wrong,
mm,
and that needs to be fixed, as they say in Pittsburgh, that needs fixing. um, you know so the SI belt helped, but for the reasons that he felt like was because there's something wrong with my SI joint. And we
okay,
talked a little bit about some things. He's a smart guy. We talked a little bit about, we have different kinds of receptors in our joints, and one of them is positional. And
yep,
I said, and in the SI joint, I showed him a picture. We pulled out the pelvis, we looked at it, and I said, this joint is pretty firm. Now, that doesn't mean it can't get sensitive.
right, right,
And we talked about the neurological input to that whole L5S1 into the SI joint region,
mm-hmm,
and we talked a lot about that there's a lot of positional sense receptors in that joint too, which is probably why he's developed this whole thing about not standing over there, because it's sensitive, and the positional senses told him to get over onto the other side. And we talked a little bit about that, maybe why his neck and upper back are stiff,
mm-hmm,
as he's
mm-hmm,
holding himself so hard. And I said,
totally,
part of that is driven by the worry that something's going to go wrong.
yes,
And he agreed with that. He said, I mean, he knows, he goes, he is definitely vocal about, I'm worried about this.
mm-hmm,
And this is why, which is good, because that's, when people complain and gripe about stuff like that, that means that they're moving out of that pre-contemplative phase and ready to kind of contemplate what else can I do to, take action here.
mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm,
we worked on some, uh, we got on the bed, and that's when everything kind of went cuckoo crazy.
mm,
Trying to roll over to get off the bed, to, lift his body and move it on the bed bothered him quite a bit.
mm,
And so we talked a little bit about that. And, I said, it's interesting because it's the same kind of thing. You're having to load transfer on the bed, just like you're having to load transfer standing up on your feet. So it's not really inherent that something, like because you're putting pressure on something that's making it hurt. I said, you can touch the region and it's sensitive. We got that. I'm
mm-hmm,
in, I'm with you. But it's not because of that's why it's hard for you to move in bed. It's hard for you to transfer your load from
mm-hmm,
foot to foot, from side to side.
mm-hmm,
And we have to figure out how to get that coordination and that stuff back in without, freaking your nervous system out.
yep, yep,
So, so that gave me an opportunity to sit there with him and kind of just work on, let's work on a bridge. Let's work on a one-legged bridge. Let's work on some of these things. Let's get this together. Let's add a little breath with it.
mm-hmm,
Let's figure out some ways to turn and to move where it does. Show me how you usually do it. And I said, no, let's change that right now. Right now, let's change
mm-hmm,
that and do it different and see if your symptoms are different.
mm-hmm,
And so, we were able to do that, just different tricks and tips, or rolling sideways to get up, and, or for him, he did better with kind of a partial sideways roll and a prop up, to swing his legs around off the bed. And there's no right or wrong way. I just wanted him to find a different way
Right.
that didn't
Right.
cause, that didn't cause the pain flare.
Mm-hmm.
So he could start relying on his movement system to make him feel better rather than to make him worry that it's going to get worse. So
Susan,
we
do you
did some
think?
of that.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think he had any deficits at all in, um, abdominal muscles, or was he overusing his back muscles, anything like that, in his gripping strategy at all?
Well, he did definitely have some lumbar extensor gripping strategies. He
Mm-hmm.
talked to me about the fact that he didn't have glutes that were working well, which we disproved immediately.
Got it.
And by just doing some forward leans and some
Yep.
different stuff, and he could feel them switch on. It's like just the way you set yourself up under gravity.
Yep.
Your muscles work just fine. It's just they just haven't been in a position to work for a while. So
Mm-hmm.
we got to get him coordinated back into the system.
Yep.
His abdominal muscles were fine. I mean, as
Yep.
far as it, he's strong.
Yep.
No neurological stuff. I quickly, because he was worried about everything, I did a full neuro scan. It takes about 7 minutes to do that.
Yep.
Everything was great. No signs of what am I trying to say? No dural
Right.
signs of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
None of that.
Okay.
So it was just like, kind of just this stiff strategy that
Right.
has been adopted around fear.
Got it. Yep.
And
That's what it sounds like.
the fear has really been, set up in there for him, and rightly so. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's been telling him all these things that are wrong,
Yep. Yep.
and
I
nobody
know.
can give him an answer on what to do. And every time he goes to see somebody, something else happens. So so I said, roll over onto your tummy. And let's just push up onto your hands and knees. Just show me how you can do it. Tell me when it bothers you. And when he got on his tummy, he leaned over and he looked at me and he goes, the last 2 PTs that got me on my tummy picked up my leg to stretch it.
Yep.
And as soon as they let it down, I had severe pain, and it was worse than the pain I've ever had before. And I said, well, I'm not going to pick up your leg, so don't worry.
Right.
And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, because I said, what in your opinion, what needed to be stretched?
Right.
And he said,
Right.
well, they all said I had tight hip flexors. And
Oh boy.
I said, okay. I said, well, let's just let that one to the side for a while
Right.
before we deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, we agreed on a number of things for him to work on and see, because he was wanting to be in the settle down phase right now. I said, let's settle this down. I agree with you. He was going back to the other person at the other place. And then he had some other things that were coming up. And so he did that. He settled things down. He felt like he could move around at work and at home without the SI belt on. So that was starting to improve. He changed his position in sitting. That made things better. He started getting up every hour at work and moving around purposely. But the biggest thing that I had him start doing was thoracic rotations, purposely wherever he could do it, especially sitting.
Yep.
So we could keep the hips still and
Yep.
get the thorax moving, because he got that feet and knee strategy. And he started really actively working on the balance exercises.
Good.
Began to make that shift over.
Get his center of mass. Yep.
Yeah. So to fast forward to a couple of months later, things were going good, but he still was having trouble really feeling like he could get on that right leg and push off. We were starting to do some loading stuff. He was actually doing some squatting stuff and being pretty excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing a lot of different kinds of step ups and kind of I had him starting to do, some just, side to side jumps, like jump over onto one foot and the other foot comes, over, things like that, forward and back. The stuff with the clock,
Yes.
like adding I love that clock yourself app. He picked that up and I said, move up to this. I mean, he was getting ready to start the next phase that he was going to start working on, was where he would slap the floor. Like it was say 10 o'clock, he would slap 10 from a standing position, so we could get that down and up kind of thing going.
That's nice.
Part of the hockey stuff.
Yep.
But he just, as I said, let's just run the app. I want to see what your movement looks like. So we did, and I just kept noticing his neck was just so stiff, and he just wasn't turning and, doing some of the stuff. He was still staying pretty stiff. And so I said, let's just take a look at your neck, see what's going on here. So super, super tight and guarded in his upper cervical area. And, I was just just taking a look and just seeing, what if you move this way? What if you move that way? Just a little bit of a biomechanical exam, just something to kind of get him out of his, get him out of his brain about it all a little bit and just kind of get him moving some. And, he related that he had an accident where he actually fell on his head
Oh Lord.
10 years ago. It was like, oh, this is kind of important.
You think?
I said, what happened? So, he told me the story and everything. And he said, yeah, it hurt for a while. I had headaches. Everybody wanted the concussion stuff and all these things, and he went through the whole concussion protocol. And he goes, I just never have thought about it since then
Yeah, it's
until
interesting.
you started asking questions.
Yep.
And I said, well, what do you feel like is the biggest limitation? He goes, oh, I'm always stiff there.
Yep.
I said, okay. I said, but then he said, but he goes, I am afraid of anybody touching and moving it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here we go again. It's like, I
Yep.
got it. I'm
Yep.
with you. I said, what if we could find another way in that
Yep.
could help get this going without anybody coming in and touching and yanking and pulling and doing all those things that you don't like and don't trust?
Yep.
And he was like, okay. So, and I said, actually, you can do it with your balance exercises. So we can make this kind of a little bit more fun. It'll jazz up the balance exercises a bit. So I
Mm-hmm.
just got him, with the clock on the wall and doing the eye exercises, moving the
Mm-hmm.
eyes up and down around, keeping the eyes still, moving the head.
Yep.
And then I told him, I said, take that clock yourself app and put it on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Create the imaginary clock on the wall, just like you would on the ground, and use your head and eyes like you would your feet.
Yep. Yep.
And let
Great
it
idea.
be. And I told him, I said, the cool thing about this is because it is reactive. You can't anticipate where you're going to go and slow yourself down.
Mm-hmm.
So you can slow the app down to where it goes like, 12,
12. Yep.
6. I mean, but you still don't know where it's going.
Right. Right.
Whereas if you do it yourself, it's anticipatory. So that
Yeah.
that slows the system down neurologically.
Yep.
So we got him going with some of those. And at first it was, he just needed a little kind of buy-in for that was, so I talked to him a little bit more and sent him a couple of resources on the cervical ocular vestibular reflex. And I said, this is going to play into some, how I said, part of this is being driven by not wanting to be on that right leg, not
Totally.
you not wanting to be there, but your ankle
Totally.
brain just kind of holding that
Absolutely.
pattern. I said, this is another way to go in and bust that pattern up,
Yep.
and not feed into the things that are worrying you so much.
Yep. Yep.
Because he just doesn't want that aggressive stuff because he blames what happened to him or his pain experience on that. So,
Well, this reminds me of the kid we talked about way at the beginning, like one of our first few podcasts,
mm-hmm,
my junior golfer. He was concussed with a golf ball and he had knee pain and he was really on his right leg, completely on his right leg. And looking back on it, I think the concussion played a large role in how he perceived the whole body schema. I mean,
mm-hmm.
especially this guy's a hockey player. I mean, this is kind of de rigueur in that sort of that game, right?
Exactly, especially with all the spinning and moving and stuff
Yes.
and
Yeah.
everything that has to, without that, with that system not firing up on a hyper excitable level, it's a
Mm-hmm.
bit difficult to have some resilience there.
Yep. Yep. For
So
sure.
that's kind of where I am with him. I will see him probably again later this month. But I just wanted to get any other input that you may have on that or anything else to do. I would really like to get him on a trampoline, I think, just to
Yeah.
do some easy bouncing and see what happens there.
Do,
See if he can tolerate some of that hopping and jumping.
yeah. Do you think his center of mass is being driven from his thorax, Susan, or from just a neurological smudge or a foot? I mean, he's got with hockey players. I always tend to look at the thorax and
Mm-hmm.
rotation. Do you think that's
The
what's driving
thorax,
it?
so the thorax is not driving it. It is a definite player for sure. And I've gotten onto his thorax and let's do some shifts.
Yep.
Let's see what happens. It comes along for the ride, but it's
Yeah.
not, it's not a driver. I did look at his feet, and one
Mhm.
of the things, and his feet are fine. I mean, as far as the movement and stuff, but he really
Mhm.
does tend to like be on that lateral border of his foot.
On his left side.
So
Yep.
yeah, on the left side. So that puts him a little bit more medial on the right side. We've talked a little bit about that. Again, he's a pusher with the skate on the right. So he
Yeah.
says, my edge is on the left when I
So,
skate.
right.
He edge left, shoot right, shoot left. No, shoot right. Yeah,
He's
he's
a
a right
righty.
shooter. Yeah.
Yeah. What about like even like just deep, like deep squat and just do some side to sides and do
Hmm.
some lateral, we should probably done already, like some lateral lunges.
We haven't really done that yet. We've been kind of just, I've been really working the balance system more. So
Yeah,
that'll be
yeah, for
good to like
sure.
expand that balance system into deeper and bigger movements.
And also like maybe like split squats, like, with that right leg behind and pushing
Oh, that's a
off,
good idea.
you
Yeah.
know,
Uh-huh.
um, that, and then he could just maybe at some point put a stick in front or a wall for rotation.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think lateral lunges, split squats. You've done the rotation. What
But in your,
about,
but
it's a good one?
to answer your original question, I do think it's neurologically driven.
Yeah, for sure. So he
Yeah.
needs to just do more motor patterning. What
Hmm.
about standing? Like, for example, I'm just doing this standing. So he lifts his left leg. So he's got his right arm in the air. He
Hmm.
lifts his left leg up and he does like almost like a PNF,
Hmm.
and then he does the same thing with the right leg up. So right arm going across the body and standing with the left leg up like in hip flexion, doing the same
Hmm.
thing with the right arm, right leg, and then switching left arm, right leg, left arm, left leg, almost like a PNF. And he can even start
Yeah.
doing like a lunge with that
Hmm.
as well, and sort of, you can incorporate pushing off that back foot. You know what I like, Susan, for just for foot stuff? I call them sling squats, where you put the hands on the wall and you have them stand with their knees bent. You lift the heels up, knees bent, straighten the knees at the top of the lift, lower down, knees straight, heels up, bend your knees, lower down. That type of
Hmm.
thing to get maybe
Hmm.
like a push off, and get him some stability on the wall, stuff like that. That's what I would probably try
Yeah, I
as
think those will
well.
be good things, especially now that I've gotten a little bit of the neck and some of the vestibular ocular
Totally.
stuff going on.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
especially that full body one, which will be good. Those will be good directions to go with him.
Yeah, that's fun. It's exciting. I
So,
enjoy
yeah,
treating athletes, so
yeah.
it's fun. Very good.
So,
Cool.
all right. So the biggest thing though is, honoring his fear. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just, that like I told people a lot is like, don't argue with people.
Yeah.
This fear is real for him and
Yeah.
it's not going to change overnight.
Yeah.
What it can change is his ability to trust himself. And
Right.
that's kind of what I tried to tap into in the beginning with him, was to begin to establish some trust for him that he could actually feel in his body what he needed to do to change it, and and giving him permission to start exploring that.
Yeah.
I said, you're already having the other stuff going on, so what is it, and you're trying to be rigid all the time and it hasn't really made it better, so why not, let's try a different way,
Right.
and see it. But you have to take baby steps, and get going, and slay the dragons one at a time.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I want him to slay the dragons. I don't want to be the dragon slayer.
Yep.
Other
Yep.
people have tried to be the dragon slayer, and it hasn't worked out well for him. So,
No, my God, it's even made
you
him
know,
worse. I mean, all the bracing that he's had, and
yeah.
uh, the bracing exercises that were done with the other PTs. I mean, that's like the last thing he needs. I
Hmm.
mean,
And he
it's
needed
all right.
he needed the opposite,
Exactly.
and he needed to move where he wasn't moving so that he could limit what it, just if you could get movement in other parts of the chain, then
Yep.
the whole system can take the movement up. And if you've got a sensitive area, then you can kind of work around that until it can kind of begin to change a bit. And sometimes that begins to change that sensitivity a little bit because you're changing some of the brain patterns. And
Right.
if you can change those movement circles in that ancient brain, then you can change what's happening, maybe as far as his pain output goes.
Yeah, I mean, you
You
can
know,
honor his thoughts, his feelings about, maybe whatever iliolumbar as a pain generator, whatever, but that's
hmm.
not the cause of the
Right,
problem at this
right.
point,
In the beginning, like I told him, I said in the beginning, yes, perhaps there was that big input from the tissue, but that tissue could be still sensitive, but it's sensitive because the brain is super protecting it.
Yeah,
And we talked about that. It's like you've been, my brain would probably protect something too if somebody told me I tore a complete ligament.
totally.
I just, sometimes I said that was a story. Not sure if it's still the story, but for you, we're just going to go with it,
Yeah,
because that's what you're worried about. And so
yeah,
let's make sure that we've got you moving in ways that you can trust and feel good, because that was the thing. We had the conversation, and the conversation was, if you could figure out ways to move that didn't cause, super flare-ups and actually could get you back moving towards the things you want to do, is this something that you feel motivated, or is this the pathway you'd like to try?
Yep. Yep.
Instead of, if I can get you out of pain and get you back to hockey. And the whole thing was getting back to hockey.
Yep.
I said these are the steps we need to take. But this is where we go. Hockey's your vision. I'm with you.
Mhm.
It's your vision, but we got to do these other steps to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if
For
this is
sure.
a pathway you'd like to try, we could do this and see how
Yeah.
it works.
Yep.
Because the other ones haven't, so I'm not going to do the same thing everybody else did.
Yep.
Because you've been there many times
Yeah.
and you've been told the same story many times, and we're still in the same place.
Yeah. I mean, and the other things were done to him,
Yeah.
PRP, manipulation. Things weren't done for
Stretching.
him.
Yeah.
Right, stretching. So he needs to taking control.
Yeah.
For him is the big what's the word?
Mhm.
I hate to keep using the word empowering, but definitely a big
Yeah.
factor.
He needs the locus of control back.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great
Okay,
story.
everybody. Thanks so
Thanks
much
for
for
listening.
listening. And also keep in mind that we have a website and an email list. And for our email people, we offer different kinds of things. So join our email list to see what's coming up. And don't forget that we are going to be doing a mastermind around the Wednesday before CSM.
CSM. Yep.
And love to have you there. But we need for people to let us know that they
Yeah.
want in,
Yep.
because we want to be sure that, we don't have so big of a crowd that we can't get anything done, but, people have really been chiming in. So if you want in on this, let us know
Yeah. Let
as soon as
us know
possible so we can,
ASAP. Yeah.
get the
Yep.
planning going.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. Other than that, I think this will be our last podcast almost of the year. Is that correct? Or I
I
think there's one coming at the end
I
of
think
December,
maybe
probably.
end of December, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
But
So,
happy holidays to
yeah.
everybody whenever you
Happy
listen to
holidays, and
it.
happy winter break, whatever you want to call it, and whatever it means to you. Thank
Exactly.
you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.